They built a replica, Peter. I want you to really visualize this. Before they ever launched a single jet, before the blackout in Caracas, U.S. intelligence knew what Nicolás Maduro's pets ate for dinner. They knew his sleeping habits. They knew the layout of his compound so well that they constructed a full-scale model of his presidential palace somewhere, presumably in the U.S., and they practiced raiding it over and over again. General Dan Caine said they didn't rehearse to get it right. They rehearsed to ensure they couldn't get it wrong. That is the level of detail we are talking about today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Daily News English podcast. I am Peter.
And I am Anna.
And today we are covering something that feels like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood screenplay, but it is not a movie. It is history happening in real time. We are talking about Operation Absolute Resolve, the U.S. military operation that captured the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro.
This is one of those moments where the world sort of holds its breath. We're going to break down everything: the military tactics, the legal charges, the oil, and the massive geopolitical fallout.
I still can't get over that opening detail, Anna. The pets? That sounds like something from a spy novel. It implies they had human intelligence on the ground inside the palace, doesn't it? You don't get pet food details from a satellite.
Exactly. And that's what makes this operation so staggering. Let's start with the timeline, because the precision here is frightening. It's January 3rd, 2026, late Friday night. President Trump gave the final green light from Mar-a-Lago at 10:46 p.m.
And the scale of force was massive. I was reading the reports, and we are talking about 150 aircraft, F-22 Raptors, F-35s, B-1 bombers, launching from 20 different bases across the Western Hemisphere. That is not a raid, that is an invasion force.
It was an overwhelming display of air superiority, but they used what Trump called certain expertise to cut the power to large parts of Caracas. Imagine being in that city. It is the middle of the night, and suddenly the entire capital goes black. No lights, just the sound of jets and helicopters overhead.
That is psychological warfare 101. Disorient the enemy immediately. So the lights go out and these special operators move in. They hit the compound at 1:01 a.m.
Right, and Maduro was not sitting out on the porch. He was inside what was described as a fortress, steel-reinforced walls, a panic room. He actually tried to make a run for the panic room when the breach happened.
But he didn't make it.
He didn't make it. And get this, the U.S. forces were carrying massive blowtorches specifically designed to cut through those steel walls if he had locked himself in. They were ready for literally every scenario.
It's incredible that with all that firepower, explosions at the military complex, fires visible at Fuerte Tiuna, they managed to extract him alive, and his wife Celia Flores, too.
The extraction was done by 3:29 a.m., in and out in under 2.5 hours. They flew him to the USS Iwo Jima, and then the photo dropped. Did you see the photo Trump posted on Truth Social?
I did. It was surreal. You have this guy who has been the authoritarian leader of Venezuela for over a decade, ruling with an iron fist. And in the photo, he's wearing a gray sweatsuit, he has a blindfold on, he's holding a plastic water bottle, and he's wearing those protective earmuffs or headphones.
Those headphones are standard in these kinds of extractions. It's sensory deprivation. It keeps the prisoner disoriented and calm, but the image, it stripped away all his power instantly. He looked small.
It reminds me of when they pulled Saddam Hussein out of that spider hole, or Noriega.
We should definitely talk about Noriega later because the parallels are eerie. But Peter, the reason they took him wasn't just regime change in the political sense. It was legal. The Department of Justice unsealed an indictment that reads like a season of Narcos.
This is the narco-terrorism charge, right?
Yes, Attorney General Pam Bondi laid it all out. They aren't just accusing him of being a corrupt politician, they're accusing him of running a criminal enterprise. The indictment claims his government has leveraged state power to protect and promote drug trafficking since 1999.
1999? That goes back to Hugo Chavez days.
It does, and it gets darker. The indictment connects Maduro and his inner circle to the Tren de Aragua gang.
TAD? That's the gang that's been terrorizing cities all over the Americas, including New York and Chicago recently.
The very same. The indictment alleges that the Venezuelan government was effectively partners with Tren de Aragua, giving them protection to expand their criminal network throughout the Western Hemisphere. So, in the U.S. view, this wasn't just capturing a president, it was capturing a cartel boss.
That changes the narrative significantly if you frame it as a law enforcement operation against a cartel that happens to run a country. It plays differently to the American public than just invading a socialist country.
Precisely. And they indicted his wife, Celia Flores, and his son, too. They also mentioned El Pollo, Hugo Carvajal. He was a former high-ranking official who flipped. He's been in U.S. custody since last year. His testimony is probably what gave them the map to the palace, figuratively speaking.
So now Maduro is heading to New York to face trial. But that leaves a massive vacuum in Venezuela. And this is the part that is blowing my mind, Anya. Trump said the U.S. is going to run the country.
That is the most controversial line of the whole weekend. Quote, "We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition."
What does that even mean, run the country? Venezuela has 30 million people. It has a bureaucracy, a military, schools, and hospitals. You can't just run that from the White House.
Well, he mentioned a group would do it, naming Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. But the details are incredibly vague. He even hinted at boots on the ground, saying they aren't afraid of sending troops if necessary.
This is officially an occupation then, or at least an interim administration imposed by a foreign power.
It is uncharted territory in the modern era. Even in Iraq, there was a pretense of a local governing council fairly quickly. Here, Trump explicitly said they don't want to hand it over too fast and have the same situation happen again.
In the world reaction, I assume Russia and China are furious.
Furious is an understatement. Russia called it an act of armed aggression. China condemned the use of force against a sovereign leader. But it's interesting. Russia claimed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was in Moscow when the raid happened. She is technically the person supposed to take over if the president is gone.
So we have a potential government in exile situation in Moscow.
It's possible. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, who actually won the Nobel Peace Prize, is still there. Trump didn't explicitly say he would hand power to her, which is making some analysts nervous.
Why wouldn't he? She's the Democratic opposition.
He said he wants to ensure a proper transition. There's a lot of speculation that this is about the oil. Trump was very blunt about the oil.
Yeah, let's get into the oil, because Venezuela has the largest proven reserves on the planet, right? More than Saudi Arabia.
303 billion barrels. But Peter, the industry is a wreck. It's a rust bucket. They're producing maybe 1 million barrels a day. They used to produce 3.5 million. The pipelines haven't been updated in 50 years.
50 years?
50. PDVSA, the state oil company, admitted this. Trump said U.S. oil companies, the big ones, are going to go in and spend billions to fix it.
So the strategy is to remove the regime, send in American engineers, rebuild the infrastructure, and get that oil flowing again.
And here is the technical nuance. Venezuela has heavy, sour crude. It's thick like molasses. It's hard to refine. But guess where the refineries are that are perfectly designed to handle that specific type of heavy oil?
Let me guess, the Texas Gulf Coast.
Exactly. The U.S. refining system was built decades ago to process Venezuelan oil. They're a perfect match. For the last few years, U.S. refineries have been starving for this heavy crude because of sanctions. If they can get that supply chain back online, it could stabilize global energy prices significantly.
But that is a long game. You can't just turn a valve on a 50-year-old rusted pipeline. It will take years and billions of dollars.
Which implies the U.S. involvement in Venezuela isn't going to be short. You don't invest $50 billion in infrastructure just to leave in 6 months.
That brings us back to the precedent. You mentioned Noriega earlier.
Yes, Operation Just Cause in 1989. The U.S. invaded Panama. They blasted rock music at the Vatican embassy where Noriega was hiding until he surrendered. He was a head of state and he was taken to Miami to face drug charges.
And he was convicted.
He was. He spent the rest of his life in prison. Then there's Saddam Hussein in 2003. Captured, tried by his own people, executed. Maduro's situation seems like a hybrid of the two, a military capture like Saddam, but a legal framework like Noriega.
It makes you wonder about the precedent this sets for the future. If the U.S. decides a foreign leader is a criminal, do they just go and get him?
That is the question international law experts are screaming about. If sovereignty doesn't protect a head of state, then the rules of the international game have fundamentally changed.
But look at the reaction in Doral, Florida. The Venezuelan community is there.
It was pure joy, people crying, chanting liberty. You have to remember, 8 million people fled Venezuela. That is a quarter of the population. They left because of hunger, crime, and political persecution. For them, this isn't about international law. It is about the hope of going home.
One woman in the report said it was a mix of feelings, excitement and fear. I think that sums it up perfectly. The guy is gone, which is what they wanted, but now the Americans are running the show and nobody knows what happens next.
It creates a lot of uncertainty. Will there be an insurgency? Will the Venezuelan military fight back? Will the gangs like Tren de Aragua launch a guerrilla war?
Trump said the U.S. military is ready to go again. It sounds like they are bracing for resistance.
They have to be. You don't take over a country without some pushback. And the blackout? Imagine the chaos in hospitals and neighborhoods. We know the U.S. cut the power, but we don't know when it fully come back or what damage was done.
It's a defining moment, Anna. January 3, 2026. This will be in the history books alongside the fall of the Berlin Wall or the invasion of Iraq. It shifts the entire balance of power in Latin America.
It really does. And for the regular people in Caracas, life just changed overnight. One day you are living under a socialist dictatorship. The next day, U.S. jets are overhead, and the president is on a boat heading to New York. The psychological whiplash must be intense.
And we will be watching closely to see who ends up actually sitting in the presidential chair in Caracas. Will it be Machado? Will it be an American general for a while?
We just don't know yet, but one thing is for sure. The isolation of Venezuela is over. The U.S. is now deeply, deeply involved.
Wow, that is a heavy story. Let's take a breath and look at some of the language used in these reports. There were some really powerful words today.
Definitely. Let's start with the word indictment. We heard this a lot. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the indictment of Maduro.
An indictment is a formal accusation that a person has committed a crime. It is not a conviction. It doesn't mean they are guilty yet, but it means a grand jury has looked at the evidence and said, yes, there is enough here to put this person on trial.
Exactly. In this context, the indictment lists charges like narco-terrorism and drug trafficking. It is the legal document that justifies the arrest in the U.S. court system.
Next up is extraction. We talked about the rehearsal for the extraction.
Extraction refers to the process of removing someone or something from a specific location, usually with effort or force. In military terms, an extraction is getting your team or a target out of a hostile area safely. They extracted Maduro from the palace to the ship.
It sounds very clinical, doesn't it? Like pulling a tooth. Then we have the word sovereignty. This came up at the reactions from China and Russia.
Sovereignty is the authority of a state to govern itself or another state. It means a country is independent and has the right to control what happens inside its own borders without outside interference.
So when China says the U.S. violated Venezuela's sovereignty, they are saying the U.S. had no right to enter Venezuela and take its leader because Venezuela is an independent nation.
Right. It is the core concept of international relations. Next word, unprecedented. The operation was described as an unprecedented escalation.
Unprecedented means never done or known before. If something has no precedent, it is new territory.
While we said it is similar to Noriega, the scale here, capturing a sitting president with 150 aircraft in 2026, is being called unprecedented because of the size and the specific context of running the country afterwards.
Another key term was surveillance.
Surveillance is the close observation, especially of a suspected spy or criminal. The U.S. intelligence gathering on Maduro's daily patterns, his pets, his food, that is total surveillance.
It's spooky how much they knew. Let's look at transitional. Trump spoke about a transitional government.
Transitional means relating to a period of change from one state or condition to another. A transitional government is a temporary government set up to manage a country while it moves from one system, like a dictatorship, to another, ideally a democracy.
And finally, surgical. Trump said they had to do something much more surgical.
In a military context, surgical means very precise and accurate, intended to destroy a specific target without damaging the surrounding area.
Like a surgeon cutting out a tumor without hurting the healthy tissue.
Exactly. A massive bombing campaign is not surgical. Sending a specialized team to cut through a wall and grab one man, that is a surgical strike.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Operation Absolute Resolve. It's a lot to process.
It really is. We're witnessing history, and the vocabulary we learned today, sovereignty, indictment, extraction, these are the words that will define the next few months of news.
We will keep following this story as the trial begins and as we see what happens on the streets of Caracas.
Absolutely. Thank you for diving into the deep end with us today.
If this episode helped you understand English a little better today, please hit the like button. Every click tells YouTube that learning English through real news truly matters.
We're dedicated to making English simple, clear, and practical, using real news to help learners grow step by step.
If you want to improve your listening skills every day, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode.
Where are you listening from? Leave a comment with your country or city and tell us how long you've been learning English. We love hearing your story.
Thank you for learning with us today and for turning daily news into real English progress. Keep listening, keep growing. You've got this.